Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here at Bermuda Is Love's second panel discussion for our campaign this month of April around food, nutrition, and food security in Bermuda. This is part of our 5-a-day campaign in which we're encouraging you all to eat 5 servings of fruit and vegetables on every day of this month, and we hope it'll vote in some good routines that you guys will carry forth throughout the rest of the year. So we are joined this evening by a couple of panelists who have agreed to participate in a discussion around the issue of food security and its impacts on Bermuda. And my name is William Campbell with Bermuda Is Love. We've got our founder, Aaron Critchlow, just here in the front row. And I'm going to give our other panelists a chance to introduce themselves, to introduce their organizations, and to give a couple of words just before we get into some other questions. So we will go through a couple of other questions and points of conversation, and then hopefully, time permitting, we will give you guys a chance to engage with them as well with any questions you might have on anything that we've shared tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Mr. Tom Wadson to lead off the introductions.
What do they say? It's unfamiliar I am with public speaking nonsense. Okay, so my name is Tom Wadson. I have been a bona fide farmer since 1976, having graduated from Ontario Agricultural College at the University of Guelph. And I started out just as a conventional vegetable grower, and it evolved into becoming a much more sustainable operation by basically adding small ruminants and poultry. This is all part of our balanced sustainable system. Thank you. Wadson Smart.
Branding is everything. And good evening, everybody. My name is Clare, Mello, and I'm the executive director of the Eliza Doolittle Society, which is the food pantry in Warwick, located right across from the Warwick Bowl. So food security and food insecurity is really what we address through the pantry, and I've been there for 2 years. This is the beginning of my 3rd year. It's been a great pleasure and a great passion of mine. So, but we'll talk more about food security as we go along. So I'll pass it on to Food Forest.
All right.
Hi folks, my name is Greg Wilson. I'm the owner of Food Forest along with my son and my niece Ebony Langborn, and I'm a gemologist. I also am a mycologist. I studied mycology and soil science with Dr. Elaine Ingham out of the Soil Food Web, and also Dr. Christine Jones, who is a leading soil scientist in Australia, and I'm currently studying agronomy with Dr. John Kemp, who is a leading agronomist around the world as well. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Faria, and I'm the founder, managing director of the Agra Living Institute. We started more than 2 years ago in the middle of the pandemic, offering sustainable farming classes for all those adults that seemed like their food security was being threatened when they had to wait in line for hours on end, and then to get in the grocery store and maybe not finding the things that they wanted. So really great start for a business, developing the scarcity, but now we are in normal. Keep using the quotes when I talk about it, though it's far from normal. And yeah, things are very different. Now we still offer sustainable farming workshops for adults. We're in the middle of that right now, but what we do have, and that we're doing a lot of, is education programs for children. And yeah, I think it brings a lot of long-term impacts because I'm into farming, arguably because I had a lot of experience as a child in it. As a teenager or young adult, I probably wanted to distance myself as much from it as possible. But definitely, it has found me again, or come back around to it. So exciting to be part of this discussion with lots of experience here. And yes, we're gonna leave it at that.
You want it back, Will? Sure. Okay. Do it this other as well.
Sure.
Yeah. So for the purpose of this panel discussion, we've got a couple of just guiding subjects that we'd like to talk to you guys about. And really this is your show, so we want to give you guys as much opportunity as we possibly can to talk about the issues you'd like, to throw in any other comments, etc. So we'll just keep it as free-flowing as possible, beginning really with asking you if you can tell us what the definition of food insecurity in your eyes is, and what it means for us here in Bermuda.
It's interesting the way that's put, because I never looked at food insecurity. I was always striving to get food security. And yeah, and so so what is it? It's access to food. It's and so what is it from my point of view? From my point of view, I try to run a farm. I hire people, a crew of, I have a garden crew of 7 guys, and other people running other parts of the operation. And unlike, say, North America or that, we're basically full on 365 days a year. So it's not like you plant in the spring, you grow the crop, and you harvest in the fall. And I first was confronted by this whole sort of thought in North Carolina when we used to actually, I used to fly up there and get virus-free sweet potato plants. And the guy said, well, you know, hang on, do you farm all winter? I said, yeah, man, so you don't plant, grow, and harvest. I said, yeah, we do all of those things all the time. So that's how that works. He was a bit astounded at that. So, but that's how it works here. So, we're constantly trying to grow something. These guys are looking at me every week for a paycheck, and there's insurance, and there's all this good stuff. You've got to find water, you've got to find seed, you've got to find all the inputs, and you get a little war cranks up over the other side of the world. Your fertilizer price doubles in 3 months. And then you're in the same breath, you have to compete. That having paid, for example, I got to buy diesel tomorrow, and over a third of that invoice will be import duty, and I got to compete. Okay, we get a couple of breaks. We get things in duty free and stuff, but most farming societies in the world are actually subsidized. We're not. Come on, I'm up there working. I got an acre and a third of land up there. I had to buy it. No choice, because this is the wrong guy got it. Everything else would be getting nuked with Lord knows what, right? $500,000. That, take it or leave it. So, it just, okay, how did we get into this situation? When I started, there was a Department of Agriculture. There really was. And this, oddly enough, I had to go out and spray some fungicide on potatoes today, and I was thinking about it as I, at my ripe young age now, 47 years into my business, putting on that sprayer and getting the stuff all ready to go. You know when I started? 236, 4201. Look, I need a potato spray, please. Gone. I watched an apprenticeship for agriculture disappear at the stroke of a pen. I've just seen so much. There has been, but the saving grace of the whole thing is there's been a small collection of guys, or people, I should say, because there's definitely women involved in there as well, who like doing this and have done it and have done a great job. Some of them are second generation farms, and my second generation don't want to do it, right? But not to worry. Much has been done. I mean, and as I look at this whole thing, I mean, even as a young child, I had always had chickens. Everybody had chickens. Everybody had a garden, and just what you did. Well, lo and behold, years later, when I want to get into chickens again, it's the same way we were doing it in the late 50s. You know, with a pen that you could move across the garden and all this sort of stuff, all sustainable stuff. But what happened? The magical chemical salesman came in, I guess, and flogged all their snake oil to everybody, and that is certainly catching up with everybody now. In fact, it already has. Look at Bermuda's extremely high cancer rates. I mean, that's apart from the food. And so you've got all this going on. We've become very much more urbanized, and it's all not in my backyard. I mean, there's no pork industry in this country anymore. You know, that was a huge recycling program out of the hospital, prisons, and all this stuff. And now it's all of this food, which would get cooked and fed to pigs, is now a problem. And it's like everybody wanted to run away from it. I mean, look at, who was it, Governor Reed in what, the 1800s, 1849, some gold rush, all that stuff. I mean, he had to bring people out here to farm. Crazy, you know, but that thought is still very much prevalent, I would say, Chris, you know, wouldn't you say? So, like, from a social point of view?
Yes, I can speak to that point. I believe the Governor Reed, you said?
Yeah.
So this is right after emancipation, because I'm not a historian, and there's anybody out there that can correct me, please do. But, I mean, I think this is a really important point to bring up here, because most people don't know about it. How did the Portuguese, which I am, and before persons from the Azores came to work in agriculture, they came from Madeira. So why did this happen? We have newly emancipated Black Bermudians, whether they were using that term then or not, I'm not sure, but they are, formerly enslaved persons who had a lot of farming knowledge because they were out there doing it every day. They're newly emancipated and they're asking to get paid a certain amount of money. I couldn't tell you that right now. There's definitely some experts on that. And the white oligarchy at that time, white colonialist government, obviously didn't want to pay that, so they shipped in imported labor. And yeah, I mean, that's how we get Portuguese in Bermuda. You talk to a Portuguese person in Bermuda, unfortunately, they will not be able to tell you this story. But I think it shines a lot on where we are in 2023, and we talk about immigration issues in Bermuda as well. Black Bermudians, Black Bermudians are still being displaced by, imported labor. And that's a whole nother panel discussion. But we are focusing on agriculture, so if we're talking about what is the new model that's gonna replace all this old, antiquated model, which is not providing enough food and poisoning us, unfortunately, we need to have the conversation around racism and agriculture.
That thing's like a hot potato.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna give you the definition of food security and food insecurity, as a definition. So the definition of food insecurity is a condition of not having sufficient food or food of an adequate quality to meet one's basic needs. Definition of food security, as defined by the United Nations, is a situation that exists when all people at all times have social and economic access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food that meets dietary needs and food preferences for an active, healthy life. So that's what the definitions are of food security. And yeah, so that's it. I'll stop there.
I believe that food insecurity, or food security, let's put it that way, instead of insecurity. Food security is something that we all should be concerned about, each and every one of us. In 1980, we had 3,000 acres of arable land that was farmed. Today, we only have around 600 acres. That's a tremendous drop. In my opinion, farmers are the most important part of any community because they are responsible for feeding the people. And if the farmers, you can basically tell the condition of any community, especially by the community's health, what type of farmers they have or they don't have. If you look at your healthcare system and you see the degradation of it, it is a direct correlation to the type of foods that we are presented with and the foods that are presented by the local farmers. It's a combination. So food security doesn't mean having a lot of food. It's the quality of food that we have. that ensures the health of the community. Because if the community is healthy, then it takes all the pressure off of all of the other systems, the healthcare system in particular, the insurance system in particular, and the family structure in particular, because when a family member gets sick, the entire family has to pay the price for it. So farmers have the most important job to me. And we cannot have a discussion about food security or food insecurity until we address the issues of chemicalization of food. We have, right now, you can walk into any one of these department stores like Gorham's or Masters or SAL, and an 8-year-old can pick up poisons that can kill them, just like that. And this is a health issue, and something that the health department has full control of. As a member of the agricultural board, we have no jurisdiction when it comes to the importation of herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides. And as a mycologist, I know for a fact that the food that we are presented with is sprayed with these particular chemicals. And these chemicals is what's causing the health crisis. So unless we address that critical issue, we can have discussions like this all day long. It will go nowhere. All right?
Just because we've covered some of the other issues around causes of food insecurity, I wanted to ask, what is it then that makes, besides the degradation too of our available arable land, what other factors are making Bermuda so food insecure at present?
Well, I'll speak to that. Like I said before, we're in business 365 days a year. But it strikes me that, for example, we have a very fortunate setup, a form of protection for farmers, which is the economic embargo system. And that can be used to, well, let put it to you very simply. Bermuda needs, let's say it needs 100 boxes of cabbage a week. If I have 101, they'll stop the importation. If I have 99, they'll stop the importation. So then it brings you to the whole thing of, let's look around your kitchen, and you want to have dinner, and, well, I got, let's say we're going to need 6 potatoes, this and that. Well, now if you go to the grocery store, and you've only got, say, 4 potatoes, so you're going to buy 2 or you're going to buy 6? You're going to buy 2, right? You got it? Fill up the thing. But, so if we're sure, what I'm trying to say is, these guys will buy it in from the importers, will bring it in. Most of the time before they, it's our stuff, if we don't have enough for full embargo, it will, there's potential, they'll just import over you. Just like that. I mean, I set up a whole thing a little while ago to bring in, it's a good time of year to do it, quality lettuce for institutional packs for restaurants, nice mix, everything you can imagine it. Importers just change the name of it, lemon, and bring it in under I'd say 200 boxes of lettuce went in the trash after that. It's wrong. It's just wrong. We're buying stuff that we don't need to buy, importing it, spending money outside of the country, and there's a good, there's a perfectly good supply here. So I submit there are distribution challenges. There are marketing challenges. I mean, I spend a lot of time just trying to sell stuff, when I should actually be out growing it. I'm like, fortunately we have new media we can use, say, be it email and WhatsApp and that sort of thing, but it's constantly on the pulse. And keep the quality of it up, and it should go, but occasionally it doesn't, and they just floor you on it. And that's not fair. Not fair to Bermuda, it's not fair to the people of Bermuda, not fair to the farmers, it's just not fair. And everybody's getting shortchanged on that deal. And I think the dead giveaway on this thing is, if you look at it, all of a sudden, when I started, they had a Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and they looked after agriculture and fisheries to the best of their ability. It's not the case anymore. Now we have, and I mentioned a few, little while ago about sweet potatoes. I spent 25 years trying to bring in the orange yam into Bermuda, which is on a quarantine embargo, and there's three things you should know. Quarantine embargoes because of pests and bugs. So you have sweet corn, carrots, and sweet potatoes that cannot be imported no matter what. And for various pests that come with them. Okay, so we found out that there's a virus that gets into sweet potatoes, and it's called feathery mottle virus. And I was really ambitious in my younger years. You know, I mean, I got this, I used to go to these various conventions and stuff and met a lot of really cool people. And I actually got this tip from the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of New Jersey, which, by the way, is the 5th largest vegetable growing area in the United States, southern New Jersey, believe it or not. Anyway, so he put me on with these guys, and then I ended up with University of North Carolina, and all this crap. Well, cut a long story short, this is what happened. I found the right people. The senior plant protection officer and I went up there, and we met all the people, we checked out all their facilities, and what they're able to do is produce these plants without this virus. And they do it basically, it's not genetically modified, but it's just done very clean. And I'll tell you what, the state of Louisiana's got a program for the same thing. They'll run circles around North Carolina because they've refused to deal with this anymore. I think it was over the Uyghurs. Terrorists. Y'all, what the guy said? I see y'all bored in them terrorists, right? Anyway, but what happened was, and then I told him, so you have 5 days to get these cuttings from cut to in the ground. And so you gotta hustle. So we set it all up. And you know, you had to fly up there, you had to buy these plants and do all this stuff. I had about $1 a planting. So you don't want them all to come back and die. So I actually laid it out on raised bed plastic with drip irrigation. And we planted these things. And at about 80 days, are you familiar with how we do the raised bed plastic? Anyway, it's a plastic bed. Got water in it, and we can put anything you want up there. We sneak seaweed up there 1 week, a little bit of Epsom salts the next. It's fabulous. This guy had never heard of anybody planting sweet potatoes like this. Well, 80 days later, I'm talking to the guy. I say, hey, look, man, I think I really got a crop here. You know, the plastic was actually looked like a cobblestone thing, you know, with the things expanding underneath it. And I said, you know what? I suddenly, wow, could be spectacular. What should I expect as a yield? He didn't miss a beat. He says the North American average is 300 bushels, which is basically 55 pound of red sack bag per acre. He says, I'm very intrigued with that drip irrigation thing. He says, I bet you would get 500. I'll think, ka-ching, ka-ching. Guess where we landed up? In sleepy little 1 acre of Bermuda. 850, tripled the North American average, okay? Tripled, with a high quality potato. But then we started buying from others, trying to get other things. The government got involved and they didn't like the shipment, so they didn't pay for it. And then, you know, then we tried again, and these people come to find out they're all USDA or US inspected premises. But you know, they sprayed there 4 years ago or something. So, and quite correctly, the Department of the Environment and the Plant Protection crowd rejected them. They even had Japanese beetles on them, on which there's that whole separate act of parliament on them. You know, because they were just doing a lousy job, so they stopped sending them to us because we'd have to do all this work and, you know, ship them down the road. So what a huge opportunity missed. You can't, you struggle, right now this week, I don't think there's a sweet potato out there in the whole country. You know, there's very few right now. And these are the opportunities that we're missing. And these are the things that, I mean, I'd love to do it. I actually bought a greenhouse, and then I got COVID, and I got charged more money for the building permit for a greenhouse than what they charge you per square foot. 2.5 times more for a greenhouse than what they charge you per square foot to build a house in Tuckerstown. Where are we going? You know, the whole thing, the balls are just dropped by the wayside, left and right. And heaven forbid, I had a crop confiscated because they didn't like the way I imported the seed. You know? And there's another kid about to have that happen to him today after he posted his new crop of potatoes. And he's gonna, they'll probably, oh yeah. You go to gun court, the whole 9 yards, right? Confiscate your crop. Can't donate it to charity or anything. You know, what sort of bureaucracy are we running here? That's my question. That's what we're up against. We're not getting any support. In fact, we're getting, you know, the testing you have to do to bring in, there's gotta be a middle ground here between, you know, sort of obviously pest control and, you know, bringing in all this stuff. You have a case in point of we barely got seed Irish potatoes in this year. And it's all taken right up to the 11th hour. 2 big farmers didn't even plant any, okay? So there's gonna be a potato shortage this year, bet your butt. And, but they've got more requirements than what you've had hot meals, you know? And who's to say, has anybody tested the environment out here to see if they're not already here? You know? And I would say mom and pop have been planting the sprung potatoes in their pantry or whatever since like the first week after the seed venture got here, you know? And I mean, and so don't think that you can, we're dealing with biological material, it just goes on, but, you know, but there's political issues with this thing. Then we have, I see my good friend Colin there, and the great vertical growth, that's gonna be fascinating. I did read some of the comments in the paper today, yeah, they all come to Bermuda because they saw what suckers we are, you know, international. So it's frightening, but we have issues that don't get resolved. Yeah, I've been asked to get off the, kicked off the board of agriculture, right? Because I got too much to say, right? And there you go. Somebody else better take a turn.
Okay, Will, can you ask me the question again?
Yes, just around what other obstacles and what other impediments are we facing towards food insecurity? We heard a lot about bureaucracy and other issues in the government just now. What are we expand?
Cool. Yes, aside from bureaucracy, the biggest challenge for Bermuda's food security would be mindset. I grew up in a country, I still live in a country where probably many adults, if they were surveyed by the TV news like they do and say, do you think Bermuda has enough land or resources to grow a significant amount of its food? And most people would say no. That's a convenient lie that we tell each other. Greg spoke to the amount of land, the land situation. So I teach in our workshops. If I have 5 minutes with a person, I talk to them about this. So in Bermuda, we have the equivalent of 209 football fields worth of unused farmland. That's agricultural reserve for those who know the lingo. That's land that is protected by law and can't be used for anything else. So again, 209 football fields. Those of you who are growing at home, imagine all that wonderful food that you're growing in your little 600 square feet. Imagine if it was a 1.75 square acre football field, and then times that by 200. If that was going on, we probably wouldn't have this conversation this evening. We'd be having probably some really positive things going on, or not probably, for sure. I mean, everything goes back to quality food like Greg was talking about. So that's a big thing. Another obstacle is that according to the 2021 census, there are 100 individuals working in agriculture in Bermuda. That is 0.2% of the population. Probably a similar thing to what's going on in North America. Tom already spoke about the trajectory away from agriculture in Bermuda, running away. And unfortunately, we can't run away from it because it's following us. So yeah, we have a lot of opportunities. I mean, it seems a bit doom and gloom, but I'm really excited, and I think we are definitely in an agricultural renaissance because there are a lot of persons getting involved in agriculture. So whether they're doing it commercially, like Greg and the other young man Malachi we were talking about, and a lot of other smaller operations that are starting up that need support by us, the consumers, and by the government as well. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity and it's happening right now. Obstacles for food security. I mean, I would say those are two of the biggest things. Mindset, so being able to walk away from this understanding that it's very possible for Bermuda to grow a significant amount of its food in a healthy, organic way. We can probably talk more about the technical part in another panel discussion, but so much is possible.
And that's the interesting thing.
Harrison?
Very quickly, Greg, I mean, how about certification? What have they done about that? Nothing, you know? More lack of
Certification.
bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, that's
Ah.
hit or miss. You can talk about certification in all jurisdictions across the world, and there's a universal standard, and then there are sectional standards, like the United States has their own, South America has their own, Europe, and that's another subject. But Chris is right. It's a mindset. It really is. Myself, along with many others in my age group, we had food security. We grew up in food security. Our neighborhoods were food secure. From the fishermen to the gardeners to the butchers. In every neighborhood, we would share food. I remember going to my cousin Kathy and, hey, here's some carrots, and her father, here's some pumpkin, and we had food security. Mindset changed because we became complacent. And that's the bottom line. We all became complacent. And it was evident during COVID how complacent we became because everyone wanted to have a garden. But the critical thing that most people do not understand is taking the effort and the time out to get the knowledge. Because when you're growing food, you're dealing with living organisms, okay? These are alive, and the soil is a living organism. There's more life in just a teaspoon than there are humans on this planet. And if you get to understand them like I do when it comes to mycology, now you get to, they're your allies. They are what keeps you healthy. They are what makes things grow. And we can do it sustainably. We don't have to have import anything. I'm sorry, no disrespect when it comes to other systems. We can be diversified. We can have aquaculture. We can have hydroponics. I built a hydroponic system. I built aquaponic systems. And I just go right back to the soil because the soil is critical. And Bermuda has a beautiful soil. Even though we don't have soil depth, we have some great soil. And we can use what we have. We have an abundance of everything that we need to regenerate our soil, to grow healthy food. But if we don't take the time to learn how to do it and do it sustainably, and that's critical for food security. You need to be sustainable. Hydroponics, aquaponics are not sustainable. Sorry, you have to import the inputs. And if you cannot import the inputs, what happens? So sustainability comes from cycling. You have this regenerative system where the organisms and the flora and the fauna that we are potting up mile high and letting it burn, that can completely solve our food crisis when it comes to growing vegetables.
Well said, Greg.
Okay, so I'm actually going to just talk to you a little bit about how we see it at Eliza Doolittle, food security, and what it looks like to us. So we service about 375 households a week, and we provide a bag of groceries for those households based on the size of their household. And that's increased from about 325 households just before Christmas. So the lines outside the Eliza Doolittle Society continue to grow and the registrations continue to come in. And in a recent research report that was commissioned, I'm also part of a food security working group that It's about 9 nonprofits that are in the food security space in some way, shape, or form, either doing groceries, meals, vouchers, or a combination of all three. And we commissioned a research report, which we're going to release the findings soon. But we talked to the people on the ground, our clients, to find out what is some of the what are things impacting them. And so yes, access to good, fresh food is certainly one thing, but it's also about affordability, right? And so some of the things that are impacting people is clearly the rise in food price, the impact of inflation. You know, those people that are living on a fixed income, I think, are probably being hit the hardest because they don't have much wiggle room. You know, the cost of everything, the cost of your electricity bill, childcare. If you have children that are not in school, they're in daycare or nursery, that's very challenging for many families, and especially many young single mothers, keeping their children at home, but that's also a challenge because then you have there's more mouths to feed. So there's a kind of a cycle. Unemployment and partial employment. So after COVID, not everybody returned to full employment. So without full employment, there may be less benefits or lack of benefits. And many households, and the Family Center we'll tell you this, many households are kind of one paycheck away from being closer to the poverty line, not being able to make ends meet. So, you know, we had a lady come into the pantry the other day who said, you know, well, I thought I had a good job. I do, I love my job, I have a great job, but then my husband just lost his job, and my job isn't good enough to support both of us. And so it's those kinds of things that's what it looks like. And when people ask me, you know, what does it look like? I can say, well, you know, you can take any group of people in Bermuda and say this food security looks just like you, because it's very diverse. And there's people of all walks of life who are in a predicament 1 week or the next, or 1 month here and maybe not the next month, but that could use a hand. So I just wanted to say a little bit about that. And with regards to farming, clearly I'm the only non-farmer here, except that I did build my own gardens during COVID. We did, and we grew stuff. I'm very successful, right, Michael, with lettuce and herbs and things you can grow in 11 inches, which I need to talk about later. But so one of the things a couple of things that we've done at Eliza Doolittle is when I assumed the position, I wanted to make things a little healthier, and so I launched a Healthy Bags initiative, which is to start to try to introduce more healthy foods, reduce our reliance on solely canned foods, and reduce the sodium, sugars, fats, and what have you. So we got a grant to purchase bread from a local baker, Crow. We got in that grant to purchase fresh vegetables from farmers, so that we could provide fresh vegetables at the pantry. So we do that. So we purchase, we have deals with farmers. Some farmers donate to us, and we purchase at a discounted rate. We also take food from retailers who aren't able to, one retailer who isn't able to use up all their food on a Sunday, they bring it to us on a Tuesday, and we purchase it from them, and then that goes out to our clients. So we're looking to grow that partnership, and then we'll talk to these gentlemen about how they might like to get involved in that. And if I'm not necessarily, you know, I might not be able to change your mind. Mr. Weeks, who was Eliza Doolittle's champion, he might be calling me. So, but yeah, so that's just a little bit about what it looks like for us in the nonprofit, and I can tell you from the food security working group, many of us are close to being or are maxed out at what we can provide, because during COVID and certainly God is good, but so is the community, and the people in the food security space were blessed with a lot of donations. Though those donations aren't as abundant as they were, so some places are beginning to cut back services. You know, maybe cut back on meals price charges, cut back to 3 days a week, starting to reduce it a little bit. You know, so that's what it looks like from our perspective.
And on that note, is what from your perspectives can individuals, communities, government groups, other NGOs, other local companies do then to support the mission of providing food security and providing access and affordability for high quality food for Bermuda.
Whoa. We gotta do it. I mean, where are the people lining up to take over from me? I'm 71 years old. Where are they? Nowhere to be seen. And that scares. That's scary. I happen to have the only abattoir in Bermuda, and I can't keep going at this much longer. And there is, and consequently, there's a lot of meat getting slaughtered out in the bush now. So where's the health inspections on that? This stuff just never even gets thought about. But so if I shut down tomorrow, what happens? It's pretty terrifying, when you think about it, because we simply haven't. The industry's been allowed to food security, and I say that in the form of any form of farming. It's just been allowed to erode generally, and there's a lot we can do, Greg, and there's many ways to do it, and it comes back to the mindset.
Yeah, I agree, Tom. It is mindset. I have a different perspective than you. I am with young people every day. The average age at our gardens is 24. I have 5 individuals who range from 16 to 25. And they are actively involved in gardening and producing food, learning all of the aspects from seed production right through to harvesting and distribution and sales. And their enthusiasm is phenomenal. And the amount of kids that I deal with every week from schools who are participating in school gardens and learning, the homeschools that come, I spend probably 20 hours a week with kids, either at the farm or in the schools. Work Academy is one particular school where I partnered with Rosie Wingate, and they have a vibrant farm garden going on there, where they now are producing food and selling it every Monday, I think it is, Monday afternoon at the school, to the students, parents, and so forth, and I think it's wonderful. And these kids, and I'm talking 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, are producing food, and they're going home and doing the same thing at home. So that, to me, is the future. You want to know where it's going? This is what we have to invest in the youth, in the children, in the young ones, and teach them how to grow food, how to grow it organically, how to do it sustainably. And once they have this life skill, it will be with them for the rest of their lives. Just like it was with me, like it was with Jeff, as our parents taught us at a very young age. And here we are in our 60s, and we're still doing the same thing. So yeah, there's a great future, but we all have to invest in the youth. We have to teach them. If you don't teach them, yes, it's going to die. Yeah. It will die a slow death. So we have to teach the youth. And I think the new education reform system, talking to the minister at a private meeting, and he explained to me how these types of vocational skills are now going to be incorporated into the new educational system. So that's going to really help to amp up our efforts when it comes to food security. And I'm going to do everything I can to teach the youth everything I know. All right?
So the question is about what individuals and the community can do to improve food security. Is that right? Okay. So this is a good opportunity for us to think about moving from quite a consumer base. I talked about that there's only 0.2% persons working in agriculture. So what the other, what's that? 99.8% of the population is doing. Where we have a lot of home gardeners, so that's really good. I understand Tom's frustration with who's going to be following Tom out there. I think it's an opportunity for us to reimagine what agriculture is. A lot of the new agricultural businesses are not tractor-based, so there is a lot of no-till. Can I call that what you do? Go check out Greg. Greg's doing no-till. We teach grow bio-intensive sustainable farming. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to engage with our native soils and grow an abundance of food healthily. A very simple thing that we can do until we become producers, because that's the point that I'm trying to make is, we may all not be called to get our hands dirty in the garden, but maybe we have a skill set that allows us to produce things. There's a lot of people that are really crazy about making sourdough. I've even started to have conversations with people interested in growing grains, which we do in our education garden. We've grown lots of different grains over the years successfully. So that's also another thing to think about us. So we are definitely about eating 5 a day, working hard at that, but definitely how do we get access to whole grain, nutrient dense grains as well is super important for a diet. So yes, moving towards more producers, whether that's growing food or baking bread or building something, actually having that belief that you can do something and not just at the whim of what's going on at the grocery store. Definitely want to bring up the environment of all of the education programs that we do. It's about teaching people how to grow some food, empowering them with that knowledge, but also fostering a relationship with Mother Earth. And especially with the young people, we just had our after-school program this afternoon, and for 3 to 8 year olds, their attention span, is not that long. Trying to teach them how to plant carrots or tomatoes or whatever, but what they do like to do is engage with nature, and that's really, really important. And connecting those two things together, we talked about growing healthy food and understanding how nature works. Nature has its way of growing things healthily, the nutrient cycle. I keep talking at Greg because I also am in the soil food web school, and it's really, really fascinating to learn more about how microorganisms work in the soil and how we can mimic nature's ability to grow abundance without inputs.
One big thing that I think we as a country need to address whole scale is the reduction of food waste. And we tried in our research report to get to the retailers and wholesalers to say, okay, so what happens to your food before it gets to waste? So if you're a retailer and let's say what happens to your bread or your vegetables let's say in Linda's, what happens to them before they go to be thrown out? Do they get given to your staff or unfortunately we didn't get those answers, but we need to reduce food waste. And there's in the United States, there's lots of initiatives around how you can, they call second day programs where how you, in Whole Foods, for instance, is second day food that you get at a different price. It's the same with fruits and vegetables. There's some fruits and vegetables that people won't purchase because they don't look good, but they're still good. So how can we reduce that waste so that farmers don't lose out on those vegetables? They don't go. He's not throwing away all that lettuce. And so one of the things that Eliza Doolittle wants to become is a repository for that kind of food that we can offer to our clients. It's still good. We can purchase it from farmers at a reduced rate, so they break even, and it doesn't cost that much. But our clients will get fresh vegetables. So it's just stuff about food waste is a huge issue that we need to, I think, look at from a country perspective.
So, what other, we talked a little bit about incentivizing, reducing food waste, of promoting education, certainly. What other kind of institutional frameworks do you think, and we certainly talked a little bit about encouraging the education and encouraging vocational training. What other kind of institutions do you think we should be empowering and engaging with in Bermuda and engaging the public better with in terms of promoting food security and certainly domestic production here?
For growing healthy food. But we can certainly reduce the amount of waste that we have. Lindo's brings me a truckload of vegetables that have spoiled, and I mix them together and I make tons and tons of compost. And this compost, I use it in all of my beds. Chris uses it, several people use it, and they get great results from the compost. Because that's what nature does. We just have to mimic nature. We mimic nature. We eliminate a lot of these issues that we are currently finding ourselves with. I sit there, I watch the ant. I watch the insects, the microarthropods. I watch the churchworms. I watch the earthworms. I watch them. And whatever they do, I just try to mimic it. And I find by following that principle, I have no waste. Absolutely none whatsoever. Chris can speak to that a bit.
You want me to speak about your compost?
Yeah, I can do that.
I can plug Greg's compost really good.
I asked
Yeah,
if he
yeah,
sold
yeah.
it.
Absolutely.
About regeneration.
I asked if he sold compost.
Yes, I do.
Yes, Greg sells compost. Go check him out down there. Frank's Bay. I recently learned that's the official name of the area. But, I mean, this composting technique that Greg's talking about, you can definitely learn how to do it. And I think that's a big answer to this large food security problem is localization, or, like I say, mindset, us believing, that we can grow our own food. And while you're growing your own food, you should definitely be making your own compost, because all soils need compost. Maybe there's some old growth forest that's never been disturbed that is probably doing fine and dandy, but definitely around our residential areas, they've always had disruption, and then our agricultural fields obviously are, like Tom says, 365 days. If you're a little microbe in there, you're pretty tired, you need some friends, so definitely making some compost would be good. But the question, Will, you were talking about, could you say it again?
Yes.
Sorry.
Just on promoting institutional frameworks around assuring food access and food security.
Institutionalization. I would argue that we need to go the other direction, and a word I like to use is localization, community-based agriculture. I like that Greg spoke on his experience in neighborhoods food security. I wrote that down. I mean, that's probably still happening in Bermuda, and that sounds like a real tangible opportunity for us to band together. Because I can only grow so much myself, but if we work together, it's exponential, the yield that we can make, and can really live in an abundant society. And community-based.
I think one thing that is, one thing you need to know is growing good food is not difficult to do. That's great. But then we look at what do we do to store it? We have a marketing center up at Prospect that has one clunky old compressor or something on it. They charge you an arm and a leg to store stuff up there. I don't use it. I can't afford to use it because it'll break down. I'll lose all my stuff. They charge you an arm and a leg to use it, and if the thing goes down, you're absolutely 100% out of luck. But that is our food. We've got to be able to store the stuff. Back to sweet potatoes again. You can store those things at 56 degrees for a year. Fresh food. They'll only get sweeter. But we have no physical, or very slight physical ability to store the stuff, and that is a concern. The few potatoes that are around that are seen so far, but you've got to be able to store this.
Full food security in any country would depend on everybody having equitable access to food, and to have that they would have to have financial resources to do that, and so that may be employment of some sort. So I think it goes, it's all connected most people that are generally food insecure, or mostly are people living below the poverty line, right? And or that are partially employed. So employment is a big part of being able to have access, equitable access to anything, and that includes food. And then there's the pricing of food. is there any way in which we can do something different around the pricing? The prices are very high. What can we do around that? I don't know what the answer is. I'm just putting it out there. But whether we look at second day programs or whatever it is, so food pricing and then again with the mindset, it is interesting that with produce that may not look as good as it's interesting how people won't take it, and we even experience that at the pantry. They're I'm not sure. It's still good. You can still use it, but yeah, it's got a black spot on it. So you can cut that out, and it's still good. So that's a mindset we have to also work on, right? That it's still good, and as it can be regenerated, be composted, but it's still good. You can use it, you can rework it, right? Repurpose food. So talking about how we can repurpose food, how you repurpose food in your own household, how you reduce waste in your own household. If you make a dish, a meal, or whatever, and you have leftovers, and you finished eating leftovers because you're tired now of leftovers. So what do you do with it? Do you throw it out, or do you make it into something else? And what does it look like to repurpose that, whatever it is, macaroni and cheese, into something that's not macaroni and cheese, or whatever. But it's those types of things I think we have to look at for individually, and also from a community-wide perspective.
Food security to me looks like it's never going to happen. I'm just being realistic. We have a small community, and in order for it to be food secure, each and every member of that community must be engaged. And it's unrealistic to believe that each and every member will be engaged. To the point where, as today, we rely on just a handful of farmers, less than 2% of the population that are producing food. So if you really want to look at food security, you must first ask yourself, what am I doing to contribute to food security? If you're not doing anything to contribute to food security, then what's the point? What's the point? I said earlier, I came up in an era where I believe we had food security. The food industry in Bermuda is an $800 million a year industry. $800 million. And it's controlled by 2 ships. Let that sink in for a minute. There are maybe 4 major companies that control 98% of all the food that we eat. 98%. And 2 ships are responsible for bringing that food in.
It's actually 3, Greg.
Well, yeah, 3. Well, I don't count 1, but yeah, 3. All right. Yeah, there are 3 ships. Thanks, Tom. And if for whatever reason, and they always guarantee, you're gonna hear them tell you, oh, we're guaranteeing that, don't worry about food security, we're gonna make sure that your food is on your table. What concerns me is the quality of that food. We have no control whatsoever with the quality of that food. And the quality of the food is a direct result of the quality of the health of our community. When I was 17, 18, we didn't have high rates of diabetes, hypertension, and all of this other autoimmune diseases. We never had that because we ate the fish from off the rocks. We shared our vegetables with each neighbor. My mom used to throw the dishwater out in the garden to take care of insects and pesticides. It was natural. And so our communities were healthier. But since we've relied on the marketplaces of Bermuda, our community's health has deteriorated. So unless we take back control of producing our own, like Chris said, you know, any nation that it cannot produce and they are consumers are doomed. They're doomed to the devices of those who provide for you. They control everything. So food security to me means taking it back. Okay? Taking it. Get your garden going. It's easy. You can, you know, if you're older, get raised beds. Put them in your backyard. You know, you can put 4 or 5 and grow whatever you want, you know? And soon you'll have enough food where you'll be giving it away to all your neighbors. I have friends who are growing food, and every week they're posting pictures of members of the community coming, and they're just giving away food for free. Healthy, organic food. If this can be replicated and duplicated like it was back in the 70s, 60s, and 50s, I can go back to the 50s, then I think that we would be much closer to being food secure than we are today.
Awesome, Greg, thank you. This is, what does a food secure Bermuda look like? Love that question. I think that's just how limited your imagination can be. Yeah, we are in Bermuda. Let's think about we, and it's hustle and bustle. I mean, I have to work hard, speak about my own experience, to pay the rent, get money so that I can buy food for me and my family. You know, if we could at least be producing our food, that's $1,600 a month that I ain't gotta go look for or work for. What am I gonna do with that extra time that I have? You know, maybe I could do something that I like to do, or yeah, have a better quality of life. I think that would be an important thing to talk about. Food secure Bermuda. So right now, Bermuda produces less than 20% of the food that it eats. Let's just focus on fresh fruits and vegetables that are produced here. And that's using less than half of the farmland that's available to us right now. So if we just start farming the other half, we can grow 40% of the fresh fruits and vegetables that we need. If we introduce other methods, we have Malachi in the back, and Greg, you know, we're doing sustainable farming, regenerative farming, no-till. This all sounds like new stuff. It's actually based on agricultural principles that were used before chemical agriculture, which is only 100 years old, and is really messing things up. So if we can use these methods on the 750 acres of agricultural reserve that we have, you know, I can speak to grow by intensive. We produce 2 to 6 times the amount compared with traditional methods. So 2 times 40 is 80, 6 times 40 is 240. 240% of the food that we need in Bermuda. And think about that for a minute. You know, we'd be living in a very, very different society. Our agri-living's vision for Bermuda is a resilient society that's centered around abundant food-growing communities. So sounds like we have a lot of work to do, but like I say, it is already in the works. You guys are here. That means this is passionate. You know, you're passionate about this. So important again. Maybe it's a way of thinking about how to restructure our community, or at least start to become more interconnected. You know, because right now we're all living in our own houses, in our own bubbles, and I mean that's probably the biggest problem. You know, how do we, you know, when there's a hurricane, that's always the really good Bermuda example. When, you know, the electricity goes off and there's no TV or devices, you know, we're outside and we're talking to our neighbors and everything's fine for a day and a half, you know, and that if we could replicate that when it's not a disaster, I think that's a good place to start. And then if we can get our hands dirty and start planting some food, you know, I think that's the type of disruption, the new model that we desperately need in Bermuda.
Tom, I'm just going to invite a quick comment for you too, and then just cognizant of our time too, I'd like to just open up the floor a little bit, just a couple minutes, just to answer some quick questions from the audience too. Before then, Tom, your vision for a food secure Bermuda.
Okay, come again.
You got it, Tom. What it looks like.
Well, this current time it looks ugly, but no, of course there's lots and lots of hope for it. I know nothing but food secure. I've been very fortunate in my life and the life I chose. Some days I wish I'd never seen a farm, but it's not just clean food, but it's there's more to it than just growing veg and stuff, because an animal component in the whole thing can be really helpful from a protein level, for health of the soil levels, and certainly, I mean, we used to fire, when there's various things, we used to have the whole gamut of animals. We had the Bermuda hogs, we're using chicken offal in them once a week and all this sort of thing. We had a real, very complicated balanced system going. It's, I feel that there's more to it than just growing stuff out of the land. The key, as we all know, is looking after the land. And without that, then there's a few other interesting things. Is being able to really crack the job out. Like several of us have these carrot planters that are just incredible, you know, and you're not pinning carrots your whole life. And it allows us to do that. I'd like to see a much more practical approach on allowing us to get materials, plant materials, I think. And when I say that, I mean potatoes, stuff like strawberry plants, clean sweet potato stock, and obviously it's within our interest. If they're not going to deal with us, the other countries, I think, to provide this, well, maybe we need to be doing a little nuclear setup to be doing this stuff here, like a microcrop lab or whatever. But it all costs money, and but it's all a great big, it's going down a tunnel with a very bright light at the end of it. We can do it, Bermuda.
All right, so just going to turn over to the audience now. If anyone has anything that they would like to direct towards any panelists in particular, or just as an open floor question, I invite you to raise your hand, and I'll do my best to get a microphone down to you. Yeah.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I've really enjoyed the panel discussion this evening. I, like many on the panel, and Tom, I've been in the industry for 48 years, and I do agree with many of the panelists that it is, especially Greg, we have to look at the youth of Bermuda. And as an example, when I was, I'm 63 years old. When I was 18 years old, I did my first vegetable garden club, which is at Gilbert Institute. And one of those students was, because she reminds me every day, was Sasha Baptist, the president and owner of Baptist Bill Supply. And she reminds me on how she learned to plant carrots and beets at that garden club. Just recently, I've been doing a garden club at West Pembroke School. And the enthusiasm of the children is just unbelievable. There's actually one young boy who's actually a gooder. I asked him if he was related to Sean Gooder, and of course he said yes, he was. But he was the best athlete in the school, in the sports day. And the teacher said, Mr. Sousa, he prefers doing the garden club than playing football. So this is just an example. So we do need to encourage that, the next generation. I do understand, I've known Tom for a long time, so believe me, I understand his frustration. But I must say, one positive, I just told the Minister of Health, in my close to 50 years in the trade, when we had the pandemic, the desire of our people to grow their own fruits and vegetables is at an all-time high. I've never seen it like this. And likewise, to keep chickens and animals and things like that, I've never seen it like this. And you know, we can do better. I mean, we had a very successful 80th Ag Show in 2019. So I don't know how the next one's the 80th, but anyhow, that's a different story. But the Ag Show really says it like it is. You know, when I first was involved with the Ag Show in 1976, you had the J.G. Outerbridge building was just filled with vegetables. Today, you'll have a little small section of vegetables. But what you do have, which is the future, is all the children entering their herbs in little tins. So that's the future. That's where we need to be. You know, I do know of what they're doing at Work Academy, which is very positive. We need to have this at every school in the country. That would be key. And what happens is when you're teaching the children in school, they're taking it home to mom and dad and saying, "Mom and dad, we need to do it. It's real cool." You know, so I think that's the future, is with our youth. Thank you.
You're right, Jeff. Can you hear me? Jeff, you're right. I'm sorry, just to interject there. You're right. It's such a different environment today. You know, the kids today are not like the kids of our generation, where we, you know, my grandchild doesn't know what an Bermuda orange is. When it was abundant. It was abundant. So I'm hell-bent on producing Bermuda orange. And I have several saplings coming up now that I'm grafting with Bermuda orange. And I'm planting them in my yard so that my granddaughters, I got 4 of them, good God. But I want them to climb an orange tree and get their oranges, you know, grapefruits, all the citruses that we had as children growing up today are obsolete. So that's very important that we teach these youth these, so that when they get our age, they will remember and they will teach their grandchildren the same thing. This what makes it sustainable.
All so very much for attending tonight, and thank you so much to our panel as well for sharing so much with us. Once again, we'll remind you that we're putting on this panel with Bermuda Is Love for the purpose of encouraging community awareness around food, nutrition, and the importance of food security here. This is part of Bermuda Is Love's 5-a-day challenge for the month of April. And as our founder Aaron pointed out earlier, this Saturday at 10 a.m. we'll be hosting a community garden event over at the T and Tatum Community Gardens. And for anyone who's willing and interested to come along and to learn a little bit more, we hope to see you there. Once more, thank you very much for engaging with our panel tonight. And if you have any further questions,